You are listening to the audio portion of the QB Power Hour webinar series, your biweekly dose of insights and learning for accounting professionals with co-host Dan DeLong and Sharon Fuller. We're here to explore the latest in the industry, QuickBooks, and integrations that matter to you. For more details on the series, visit qbpowerhour.com.
Welcome to another QB Power Hour. Today is our first in this new series of app showdowns. Today we're going to be having a plethora of apps to compare here with the Shopify showdown, comparing Shopify connectors in QuickBooks with not Sharon, but a special guest, which will finally be revealed this today. My name is Dan DeLong, owner at Dan Witt and School of Bookkeeping. Worked at Intuit for nearly 18 years, co-hosting today. Also over at School of Bookkeeping, doing a workshop on Wednesdays, oddly called Workshop Wednesdays, and admin of the Facebook group that ties to this webinar series. And joining us today is my co-host over at Workshop Wednesday, Rachel Doughty's filling in for Sharon today. For those that haven't experienced the wonderment of Rachel, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Wonderment. Wow. Well, thanks, Dan. I'm really happy to be here. And there's a lot of neat information on that slide there. But yeah, I specialize in e-commerce accounting and bookkeeping. And yeah, so with that, we use a lot of automation tools. And I've spent a lot of time deep diving into the weeds with a lot of these tools. And so spent a lot of time talking about it as well. So I've got a lot of insight.
And you just got back from Shop Talk, which is a conference in Las Vegas. What is that all about?
Oh, that was so cool. That was by far my favorite conference that I have ever been to. It was basically every e-commerce platform and marketplace was there, including Walmart, Amazon, Etsy, and Shopify, of course, and WooCommerce, and all kinds of things, and including payment platforms. They were all there, Stripe, PayPal. It was really cool, and I had a lot of conversations with a lot of different companies there, and there's just a lot of stuff going on that I wanted to keep myself abreast of all of this information.
All right, there is a lot to know when it comes to this particular niche, and you had come on the Power Hour I think a couple of years ago talking about the e-commerce niche nuances.
Yeah,
and we'll be talking about some of the things that you and I have done since then, partnering together about this particular industry. But today we're going to be focusing on the Shopify connections. Now, if you want to get connected with either myself or Sharon, you can log in or connect with us on our respective platforms, me over at School of Bookkeeping and Sharon over at Clone and Conquer. And a little bit about the updates to the QB Power Hour. We have since gone to individual registrations. Those of you that were attached to the recurring, that's going to ultimately expire in probably 3 or 4 more webinars. We're trying to make sure that all the people that were part of that recurring series get the memo that we are moving to the individual registrations, and you're experiencing that overlap of if you are registered for one of the individual ones and you're also still registered under the recurring, you're going to get 2 reminders, and we're trying to keep them in sync. But that's one of the reasons that we're moving to individual ones, because it was very difficult for that recurring to be in sync with what reality is. So you might see some mismatches there, and I apologize for that, but it's all going to be okay.
Good. Reassured.
Yes. So this is one of the quarterly series that we're trying to incorporate in the Power Hour where this is an app showdown, right? Because I think, and Rachel, we've kind of talked about this over at the workshop. There's no like silver bullet when it comes to the integration of choice. And maybe you have one that is the first one that you deal with, but then there's always those individual necessary needs from a business that might need more than maybe your app of choice. What is your thought process about, choosing one, or do you subscribe to, well, all of these could work?
Well, like you just said, they all are very different, and it's just not a one size fits all type of thing. And so when I first started looking into a lot of apps several years ago, I kind of had that same misconception that I think a lot of people have, which is all I need it to do is bring the transactions over to QBO. And then, after diving into that for quite a while, I realized, well, wait a minute, you have to back up a step and you have to realize, what am I trying to accomplish? And it's not just bringing the transactions over to QBO. I mean, there's various things that you want to happen when it comes over to QuickBooks Online, whether it's managing some type of inventory, or you want things to appear a certain way on the P&L, or you are trying to do some class tracking or location tracking. It really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. So you really want to ask yourself that question first. Do you have a client that's asking you for something specific? Are you trying to look at something specific? Maybe you're doing some kind of advisory. So there really is a litany of different things that you can do with these different apps. Some work better than others. Some work differently than others.
Right.
And so it's really important to, maybe not for everybody that's listening to have a deep understanding of all of them, maybe like I do, and you do, Dan, too. But really to have a foundational knowledge of the key issues, not issues, but the key characteristics of some of the well-known connectors out there, including the Intuit connectors.
Right. Yeah. So that's this is our agenda for today. We'll be talking a little bit about some Intuit news, where we want to make sure that people are aware about the canny option for feedback. That's not an adjective. That's a noun. Canny is the avenue for feedback, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But then we'll break down into the Shopify sales connectors, what they are, what's some of those considerations that you want to work with in talking things through with your clients or prospective clients, what is available inside of QuickBooks Online. And then we'll talk about what is available outside of QuickBooks Online, breaking down the summary integrations or the detail integrations, or when you need something that's more than just Shopify. So that's hopefully everything that we'll get into today. There's a lot to cram into an hour. We do have additional resources because Rachel and I have spent the last couple years talking about these these features or this function, and we do have some courses and content available over at School of Bookkeeping to review at another time. All right, so let's start off with our first whole question with, how many clients do you have who use Shopify? Now, Rachel, that is not the only player in town when it comes to a sales channel, Shopify, but why is Shopify kind of like the first place that Shopify tends to, or a sales channel that people tend to gravitate towards? What's so great about Shopify?
Because it's the best.
But why?
Well, I'm biased. I'm a Shopify partner and reseller and collaborator. And let me just say this. If you happen to be at Shop Talk in Las Vegas a couple weeks ago, and you saw Shopify's booth, it was like the size of a city block. You could really understand how significant Shopify is in this space. Their shopping cart power is so incredible that you can have a multi-million-dollar e-commerce brand on the Shopify platform. So Shopify really is meant, and this is what they'll tell you, Shopify is meant to create a Shopify store in a day, which you could, and start with basically nothing and scale that up to a multi-million-dollar enterprise in a matter of weeks or months. I mean, it's limitless. It's really what you can do, they can do it. What you can imagine, they can do it. It's just very powerful. I like the reporting. I like the ability that, the working with the products, because I also deal with inventory management, and we don't manage the inventory in Shopify. We can have a whole other discussion about that. We're not going to get into that now, but I do go into the product setup. I do look at variance. I do look at cost of goods sold. I do look at things like that. And just in terms of sometimes when I need to dig around Shopify, I can usually find what I need. Some of the other platforms, not so much.
Yeah, and it's kind of like Shopify is the QuickBooks of e-commerce, right? It's a really good entry point. It does a lot of things for a lot of people, and then there's this whole app ecosystem or plugins for when you need it to do more than it does right out of the box.
Yeah, and I just want to speak to Nicole really quick. There's some nuance when you're dealing with wholesale. I would never recommend. You can do it. There's some workarounds and tricks to do it with a tax-exempt customer, but I would not do wholesale and retail in one Shopify store. When you're managing that in one Shopify admin, I would do a second Shopify store just for wholesale. Or if you're dealing with more complexity, when you're doing retail and wholesale, I would wholesale out of an IMS, and we'll get to that at the end of the hour.
Yeah, looking at the poll results, looks like 71% are only a few clients using Shopify. So there are a handful or smattering of us with Shopify clients. So let's talk a little bit about the Intuit news and updates, and talk about canny feedback for accountants. And I meant to put the link in the slides, and it looks like it's not there. But there is a newish feedback channel that is available and focused on the accountant community, right? Because we tend to have pretty good feedback because we use it regularly, and putting it into the gear and send feedback, it's just kind of this sending it over the wall, and there's really no closed loop when it comes to that. So Intuit has rolled out. This is the second coming of this thing. Something similar they had probably in like 2013. But what this allows you to do is you can essentially use your Intuit login, same login that you use, or your same email address and password that you use for your QuickBooks. But right now they're focusing this feedback on three major areas: the bank feeds, modern reports, and payroll, which are three big concerns for the accounting community. But what this allows you to do is to see other people's feedback, and you can upvote it so you don't have to keep putting in individual, like, if Rachel and I put in the exact same feedback, it requires somebody else to combine those into now two pieces of feedback for the same thing. This allows you to look at the previous submissions and just upvote it and say me too type of thing with those things. And on top of all of that, Intuit product developers or development or project managers or product managers that are overseeing some of these initiatives will provide context, ask for more information if they need to on those specific feedbacks that are there, and then we'll be able to put them into things that are under review, things that are planned to be rolled out, and things that are already released. If you have feedback, this is a great way to put that in, to see if it's already there, and then you get digests sent to your email when there is updates to those things. So it's a pretty interesting experiment that they're doing with the accounting community. I believe the website is intuit.canny.io. I'll have to look that up, and let's just see if that actually works before I put it in the chat. And it is. Okay, so I'm going to put that in the chat here so that everybody has access to setting that up if you haven't already, or checking it out if you have and forgot about it. So that's something to just keep in mind about feedback. I think this is part of the challenge of Intuit, is that they have a lot of data and a lot of feedback. And, you know, if you have different places to put in feedback, it ends up being spread out and maybe not consolidated. My hope is that this becomes the feedback channel. But of course, like anything else that Intuit puts out, it's not going to get any notice if it's never used. Check it out, and we'll see how this evolves over time. All right. So as mentioned, Rachel and I did a workshop series, which was very low key, and you know, the idea of the workshop series is it's casual conversations for serious workflows. So we don't really go into a lot of demos or deep dives. It's really just a conversation that we have about those things. And, you know, we certainly can, share, screens and those types of things on the workshops, but our main goal is to have conversations about these concepts and topics. So we talk about the different components of a e-commerce business, different sales channels versus marketplaces, inventory management and considerations about that. And then, of course, sales tax is going to always creep up into that picture. And then dealing with Shopify fees and expenses. So we created a playlist, so you can just click on the link there in the handouts. Watch the playlist at your leisure, or you can go into the School of Bookkeeping, and we have those in there as well. So one of the bigger concepts about e-commerce is this concept of clearing accounts. So Rachel, you want to just kind of set the stage of clearing accounts, why they're necessary when it comes to e-commerce, and how you ultimately end up using them in this type of industry.
Yeah. So even though I work in inventory and e-commerce, I'm an accountant. I'm an accountant first. I'm also working on my master's in accounting, believe it or not, right now. And so there's a lot of reasons that we use clearing accounts, but in specifically e-commerce, one of the main reasons is exactly what you wrote here, a temporary account to account for the passage of time. And really, to think about it, the best way is it is eventually going to clear out. That's why it's called a clearing account. So I may put something on the credit side on one day, and then the next day I'll put something on the debit side, and then it'll clear out to zero. So for example, so you've got undeposited funds and accounts receivable. So those are classic examples of a clearing account, right? So you're posting some revenue in accounts receivable, and then when the payment comes in, it's going to clear that out. So it's a pretty simple concept, but in e-commerce, one of the reasons that we use a clearing account is because the payments don't always come in. Well, I'm not going to say don't always, never come in individually. They come in a batch. So there are times in which we post the revenue to QuickBooks in either a individual sale or a summary for the day. But either way, that's still getting posted to revenue. And as we know in accounting, revenue is a credit. So what we do is we post the expected payout to the debit side. And then when that cash deposit comes in, we credit the clearing account, thus clearing out the clearing account and debit cash. Sorry about that. That was my backpack. So that's really how it works in a nutshell, using debits and credits. And I'm sorry to use debits and credits, but it's really the best way to explain it and understand it. And I can talk about debits and credits forever. So if anybody wants to chat about that. And then one other thing that I'll say is one of the reasons that we do kind of keep this more conversational than really getting into the nitty-gritty, especially as it pertains to inventory, is it's hard. And so I'm more than, available and welcome to chat with anybody one-on-one when it comes to the managing of the inventory. It is so closely related to the movement of financial information when we're talking about this topic. So it can get really complicated really quickly. So I just wanted to add that on there of, why sometimes we kind of have to stay away from the ultra complex when it comes to that. But there usually always is a very ultra complex answer that we can tailor to everybody's situation. But when you're doing e-commerce accounting and bookkeeping, you got to use a clearing account. If you're thinking that you're not going to do it right. I'll die on that hill. You must use a clearing account.
Yeah. And you typically will set them up either as you set them up as bank accounts or other current assets, or does that matter?
It depends on if you want to deposit to the clearing account. It really depends. There are some situations where depending on the connector that I'm using, I will map and set up and create a sales posting, and then I'll also automate and create a payout posting. And so there I'm getting match, and the bank feeds don't need to deposit anything. If oftentimes maybe I'm using something that's a little more obscure and it can only post the revenue and it can't post the the payout portion, I will then deposit said payout into the clearing account. And in that situation, you want to set it up as a checking account. And Dan can get into the nuance of QBO. You can't deposit into an other current asset account. And so it really depends.
Yeah.
I hate answering that way. Darn it.
That is the common answer. It has to do with depends, right? Because there is no silver bullet, one size fits all, right? But and
as a advisor, everybody's advisory. My advisory is in this space. It's an inventory management, e-commerce accounting, and sales tax, and that kind of thing. It does require a lot of questions. It does require a lot of digging and nuance and finding out a lot of this stuff before you dive in. So that's why we're having this session.
Right. And so this comes into the conversation when someone has a Shopify business and they have QuickBooks and they want to investigate the option of, well, how do I get my Shopify sales into QuickBooks, right? So there's a variety of ways. And of course, the answer of how do you do that? What's the best way to do that is, of course, it depends, because it will depend on some considerations that we're going to be talking about, and the application, their budget, those types of things. But in the grand scheme of things, a Shopify sales connector, or I would call them a bridge, is a way to get those sales and sales transactions into QuickBooks in a usable way. And so there are a lot of ways or considerations when determining which way is available. There is, a Shopify connection inside of QuickBooks Online, and then there's a host of other apps that do essentially they all advertise the same thing,
and there's also hand keying in the orders, and
yeah,
I would rather die than do that. But I'm saying that because sometimes I have conversations with business owners or their team or whatever that not everybody knows everything, right? And so they'll hand key them in. So that is a thing too. In our world of apps, we don't need to do that anymore.
right. And so let's kind of go into this Shopify Showdown, selecting the right tool. And here's where the challenge comes in, right? Like if you go to apps.com or the QuickBooks Online App Center and type in the word Shopify, I did it right before the session today. I got 41 results for the word Shopify, and you can see 2 of them are essentially the same thing. Shopify Connector by QuickBooks or Shopify for QuickBooks Online. Are they one and the same thing or not? I don't know, because they've got the same icon.
Yeah.
So you'd have to go look and see if that is, well, why does this one have 4.8 star reviews with 4,600 reviews and this one has 2.2? Aren't they the same thing? Well, they may or they may not be. Right. But the core features of these Shopify sales connectors are they're going to post or bring in their way, not necessarily the way that you want, but the way that application is designed to work, sales and return information, things of, that impact that sale, shipping costs, sales tax, all those considerations or parts of that sale, and get that into QuickBooks, and then reconcile the payout in some manner with those transaction fees that they lovingly charge so for the payment processor. So would you say, Rachel, that in a nutshell is what these Shopify sales connectors are designed to do?
Yeah, they do it for you, which is great. Yeah. I mean, we're at the point now where we're not just data entry clerks, right? Mm-hmm. We are relying on automation tools to bring in this data. We verify the data, right? So now we can go beyond data entry. We can truly do more analysis for our clients and build our firms in a completely different way, like I have.
And that's why you have these things funneling through these clearing accounts, right? Because the payouts are going to be a grouping of individual sales transactions. So if you are putting into this on deck circle all of the sales are coming into QuickBooks, and eventually there will be a payout of that hitting the bank account minus fees and depending on how they paid for it, right? And we talked about, the buy now, pay later, or different options, PayPal as a payment method. Those are going to hit the bank account in a different fashion. And so that's why you would use these clearing accounts, so that some transactions go into the PayPal clearing account and then the PayPal deposit comes in at a later date.
Yep.
Right?
And I use a clearing account for every single payment method, for every single marketplace, for every single platform. That's the way I do it. I think that's the way most people do it, but that's the way I do it, just because when I've got one clearing account for a lot of different payment methods, it just gets too convoluted for me. And I have clients that are omni-channel. I mean, we've got payment methods and things coming in from all over the place. So as an accountant, it's really the better way, at least for my brain, to do it.
Right. So there are a lot of things to consider, right, as far as determining what might be the best route to go. And so here's just a smattering of some of those considerations, right? So big thing, I think the first thing to determine with your client is, where is that inventory source of truth going to be?
The number one consideration. Absolutely. most important consideration is inventory source of truth.
Because if you are managing your inventory inside of QuickBooks, then everything has to be in service to that. So that is going to rule out or allow various other options when we get to, the difference of, and but before we get in too deep, I want to let people know that at the end, there is a slide that puts a side-by-side comparison of all of the ones that we're going to be talking about here today. Which one's the best for this or that, and what its ideal fit is for. So don't worry, there will be a summary at the end, right? But that inventory
and
let
me just say really quick too, you can manage your inventory in QBO. I mean, I know that's a big point of contention for a lot of different people out there. On Workshop Wednesday, we have talked about this many a time. So I'm not even going to get into it. I'm just going to say, yes, you can if it's simple enough, if there's not a lot of SKUs, if you're just on one platform, if you're not concerned about it pushing inventory levels to your platform. There are situations in which you can, and sometimes even it's easier to do in QBO if they're not wanting, if your client isn't really wanting anything all that complex. I have clients that manage their inventory in QBO, and for that reason, are you gonna say what type of connection we want if they're doing that?
Yeah, then you'd want some detail, the sales detail.
Yeah. So in that situation, you want individual sales transactions. And so you need that because you need the item information, right? You need to know on the sales receipt. And by the way, I usually will always use a sales receipt. When those are coming into QBO, I don't ever use an invoice.
Try not to use an invoice,
Yeah, because I don't need it to hit AR because it's a point of sale transaction. You're right. It's not I'm giving you an invoice and then you pay me 30 days later. No, it's a point of sale transaction. I'm recording the point of sale and I'm recording the offset, the clearing account of where I'm expecting that payout. So easy peasy.
Yeah. So this feeds into the next topic of, Shopify omni sellers or multiple channels, right? Because once they start selling on Shopify, that's kind of like the gateway drug of e-commerce, right? Hey, look at all these other places that I could sell stuff online, like Amazon or Walmart Marketplace or TikTok Shop or, various other places to put those things in. So when you're once you've established where your inventory source of truth is, like Debbie just said in the chat, my client is managing their inventory in Shopify, which is possible. You can do that.
It's not, you're not going to get a full inventory workflow, though. It can't do purchasing, but we can talk about that offline.
Right. But then you have an omni seller who's selling in more than one place, Shopify and Amazon, for example. Right. And now there's a consideration of how do I tell those different two platforms how much I have available to sell? Because Amazon is pretty annoying when you don't have, when you sell something and you can't ship it, right? They wag their finger seriously at the Amazon sellers when they're not, when they put stuff on back order, right? So that becomes a consideration when we're talking about omni sellers also selling with Shopify. And Shopify, in their infinite wisdom, could potentially say, well, let's just connect your Amazon to Shopify. And now you have the way to get it inside of QuickBooks. But now that it further complicates the connector that you might be utilizing.
Well, you can do that now. I just spoke to Amazon at Shop Talk, and they actually now have a functionality within Amazon to connect your Shopify and manage that inventory. Again, the technology is changing so fast, so fast. That was the guy told me as of like a month before that, they finally got that completed. So I'm going to be learning a lot more about that as well. And so it's really wild how fast this stuff changes.
And then so another consideration is how they're collecting funds, right? Is it all through just Shopify payments, which is the preferred method? Are they using some other payment processor to actually do the processing? If they're PayPal, their potential buy now, pay later, maybe they'll throw in a loan.
Yeah, and
in
Shopify, by the way, they've got native integration with hundreds and hundreds of other third-party gateway. So what I want to clarify is when I say Shopify is the best, I am not saying Shopify is the best at inventory management. We manage that elsewhere. Okay. We push levels to the storefront. So Shopify is best at native integrations, reporting. If you need a Shopify loan, all kinds of different things that it's creating a store like in a snap. It's got all kinds of benefits to it, not necessarily with inventory management.
Yes, and there are plenty of other considerations like sales tax, right, which is a huge consideration where they're collecting and submitting sales tax, right? If depending on how that information is getting from Shopify into QuickBooks, they may be severing workflows based on how that information is coming in.
And sales tax, by the way, is another area where Shopify excels in comparison to WooCommerce, which I deal a lot with. WooCommerce is the worst when it comes to sales tax. Shopify highly outperforms WooCommerce.
So I'm throwing up the second poll question. Have you tried the internal Shopify connector? Looks like it's pretty evenly of yes, still using it, and yes, I turned it off. So about 50% of the people who have tried it have turned it off, and the rest are not even trying it or not applicable to what they do. So let me go ahead and end the poll and share the results there. And we'll talk about that Shopify Sales Connector, what is available inside of QBO. You can't beat the price because it is free. Depending on your version of QuickBooks, you get, I think, 1 sales connector with Simple Start, 3 with Essentials. I couldn't think of it there for a second. And then it's unlimited at Plus and Advanced. But I think there's only 4 or 5 that are ultimately available as a sales connector that Intuit creates.
And I love how Ben has said it's turned to garbage as of November 2025. I love that he has like a specific date.
When that occurred. Right?
I think it's before then, but that's okay.
It does
and for the Shopify connector, how are you managing your inventory, Dan?
Right. You would have to manage your inventory inside of QBO at that point, right?
It's only for if you're managing your inventory in QBO.
It manages, it works fairly well if they're only doing Shopify and they're only doing Shopify payments. Any of those additional considerations, it tends to get a lot more complicated for sure. And I did a workshop with Matt Fulton over at the School of Bookkeeping, and where we were kind of talked through some of these things. It was before apparently it went to garbage. So we may
in November
we might need to revisit that workshop again, but check that out there. But it is there; it's available. You can test this out in conjunction with another because there's no cost in doing that because there's no cost for the app, right?
And I will say it's also not great for high volume. It's if you've got few sales coming in here and there, maybe, and your client's very cost conscious or whatnot, try it. I don't use it, but it's definitely, it'll do the job if you've got a simple scenario.
And then, when looking outside of QuickBooks, there are a variety of considerations of those applications, right? Like the type of posting that they will do. Maybe it's a summary transaction that is not a sales transaction, but a financial transaction of like a journal entry. There may be applications that allow you to map to generic items so that you're not necessarily tracking the inventory, but you want to recognize the sale and see the sale and that history inside of QuickBooks. So you can do that with generic items, or you can have the item detail come over so that, again, if QuickBooks Online is your source of truth for your inventory, you want to have the sale that's created in Shopify mirror the sale that's created inside of QuickBooks. So you have those potential options. Additional sales channels, those considerations, where they're selling on multiple Shopify stores, for example, or their marketplace versus an online shopping cart, and then synchronizing the item quantities and prices across those marketplaces and shopping carts. And then when they have additional inventory needs that are being handled outside of QBO, determining which one that you're doing, if it's sending over detailed item descriptions over into QuickBooks, like QuickBooks Online is the inventory management, but they're doing this somewhere else, that further complicates things as well. That's kind of like the advanced options when it comes to all of that.
But it can all be done.
It can be done, right?
And it's actually, when you get into the advanced pieces of it too, it actually becomes really fun. I know that's really crazy. Yeah. Don't hate me for saying so, but it really is. It really is.
You get excited about the word PayPal, so
I know. I love PayPal, but I like it because then, I oftentimes I have to collaborate with people. I bring in, somebody else maybe that's an expert in this, and I can really get into the meat of solving an issue, and it's satisfying. I like it.
So let's talk about the summary option, right? So two of the players that we're going to talk about, they only do summary, and that's Bookkeep and A2X. There are others that enable you to do summary transactions like Webgility and Cinder, and we'll talk about those. But essentially what they're doing is they're posting journal entries. And by doing that, it could impact workflows or reports in QuickBooks Online, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's just something to keep in mind that these transactions that are going to be coming over, and some are very neat and insightful on how they come over, but because they are journal entries and not sales transactions, that is going to have a significant impact on customer reports that you might be running, or sales tax implications and those types of things, because it's not using the prescribed workflows of those features inside of QBO. So it's just something to keep in mind when you are considering these two. So here is the side-by-side comparison. We're not going to comb through all of these differences or distinctions. I did put some in bold that I want to make sure that we talk about. We had Bookkeep do a series with the QB Power Hour a couple of years ago, before Rachel came into my world, where we talked about those types of things. There, you can review them on the QB Power Hour website. One thing that I really appreciated about Bookkeep is that it updates original transactions. So when you make transactions or post them, and then you make changes or realize, oh, there's a new version or a new account that I want to add, you can go back to the original posting, and after you make those changes, and it will update. You don't have to delete the transaction and repost it. That's what I appreciate a lot, because it just updates the initial transaction. And of course, you'll have an access point to open it, right? So if you have a link there. Talk a little bit about Rachel, how A2X handles some of these posting things.
Yeah. So, and I think, like, maybe speaking to what Murph said earlier, is that, there's this like, oh, there's all these solutions, like I want them all. Yay. They're all good. And, it's not like one is better than the other. And, you really do kind of have to figure out what am I trying to accomplish, because it's not like one is garbage and one is amazing. I mean, it's not that. It's just that they're slightly different. And so, in my opinion, A2X is a little more simplistic. And that's fine. Sometimes that's what people want. And so that's fine. Bookkeep, you have the ability to get a lot more granular. And then, I mean, you can just see there's more line items on this side. It can do more things. But having said that, A2X has a profitability reports dashboard, and Bookkeep doesn't have that yet, even though they're working on it. But technically, if you're going to talk about what it does technically, is they both post journal entries, right? So, yeah, exactly, Murph. So, okay. So A2X, basically what it's doing is it's going to Shopify and it's going, hey, let me look at the payout detail. And from that payout detail, I'm going to put together a journal entry and I'm going to post it to QuickBooks Online. However, it's posting it on the sales date, but from the payout data. Okay. And we know the payout data isn't always going to be exactly what the sales data is, because sometimes things happen by the time we get to the payout data. But that's how A2X has engineered their product. It's grabbing the payout detail and it's then formulating a journal entry, and it's creating one journal entry that's got your sales information as a credit to revenue, and then all of the other things, discounts, returns, sales tax, yada, yada, yada. And then your expected payout is going to be directly to cash on the debit side, or to clearing account if you were going to do it that way. So, but I think the way they do it is they just do it directly to cash, because then the cash payout comes in, boom, matches with that, call it a day. Bookkeep, on the other hand, creates a sales journal entry. They call it a sales summary entry. And it's got the sales detail, all of the things. And then the debit offset is the expected cash payout to the clearing account. By the way, not just one clearing account. If you're a seller on Shopify, and I had a seller on Shopify that was using 7-8 different payment methods. They were using Simple Pay, Bread, PayPal, Shopify Payments, some other things. And the debit side was split into 7 different expected payouts. And so Affirm, like all these things. So it's one sales journal entry, and then another journal entry for the payment. And that would be a credit to the clearings and then a debit to cash. So when you're looking at that detail, you're seeing a sales entry and a payment journal entry. And then if it's doing COGS, that's a third entry. Same with A2X. If it's posting COGS, that's a separate entry. But now, believe it or not, I actually appreciate the 2 separate entries. Again, my clients are complicated. I deal with heavy volume. And so I like the 2 separate entries for the way I do the accounting. Everybody's different. You may have your preference, but that's technically how they do it. That's how they've engineered it. I like it that way.
Yeah. And I think the bottom line is, when we were talking about this a little yesterday, is that Bookkeep looks at it from the sales side of things, whereas A2X looks at things from the payout.
Yeah.
Things,
and so
right?
Even though, and this is complicated, even though it's looking at the payout detail, it is posting it on an accrual basis, but you're going to get a later posting because it's got to wait for that payout detail. Bookkeep has a bit of an edge because they're posting it. They're actually scraping the back end of the sales detail, and it actually ties out with the financial summary, which is a specific report in Shopify. And so every single day, those 2 journal entries are going to tie out to the finance summary report in Shopify. A2X's entry does not do that. Bookkeep's entry does do that. The only time that it doesn't, there may be some settlement issues I have done this for such a long time now I can recognize when that happens, and I can, if I'm doing a clearing reconciliation, maybe I'll go to that one day and I'll look in Shopify and see exactly what happened. But again, Shopify is a great place to go to look to see what happened, right? And so that is, I think, the edge that Bookkeep has, is their proprietary engineering. And I know the owner and the engineers, and I talk to them frequently. They have created the ability to do that, and A2X does not do that.
Yeah. So somebody's asking, the bookkeep anticipates the amount of the payout deposit to the bank. Does it ever get it wrong? You ultimately are going to connect both the Shopify for sales and whatever the payment processor is, right? So assuming that all those connections are accessible to Bookkeep, because they do have, significant amount of integrations available, it will pull it from that and push to the clearing account that you have set up to be able to do those things. Of course, we all live in a world where things don't always go right.
Yeah. And I just want to say also, we do, Dan and I do a lot of talk about reconciling clearing accounts on the workshop. And I also do e-commerce training through School of Bookkeeping, and I can train somebody specifically on reconcile clearing accounts. But I had mentioned before that in that, regardless if it's A2X or Bookkeep, when it's posting a journal entry, you have a debit side and a credit side. And this is where you really want to have a firm understanding of debits and credits as a bookkeeper. Don't just be trained on QuickBooks Online. Make sure if you're going to do this kind of bookkeeping and accounting, make sure you have a firm grasp on debits and credits, because your revenue is always a credit. Your expected payout is going to go to the debit. Then when the payout comes in, you debit cash, which is an increase in cash, and then you credit your clearing account, clearing it out. So you reconcile that at the end of the month. And then there was one other thing. It was, the net deposit. I wanted to answer this because this is the name of my business. My business is called Net Deposited. So why don't you record your net deposit to revenue, Dan? Why?
Because you don't have any insight into what actually made that up, the splits of that. You're just going to be posting it, and you're likely breaking the workflows of what
right. And cash payout, cash is cash. Cash isn't revenue, right? So if maybe you're doing, a simple cash basis, accounting for an e-commerce client, you could post your cash payouts. But guess what? That's not what you want to do when you're doing inventory accounting. You want to recognize your cost of goods sold at the same time as your revenue. So you must do accrual accounting. And if in these days, if you're going to be doing the accounting on a consumer packaged goods business, you want to look at profitability. Never in a million years would I recommend doing cash basis for meaning non-GAAP compliant accounting for an e-com business. You want to do accrual. You want to recognize your cost of goods sold against your revenue. Cash isn't revenue. Revenue is revenue.
So we have 5 minutes to go through all of the other.
Oh, sorry. Okay, let's go fast.
So we will likely run a little long. If you can stay, great. That's fine too. But we are obviously recording, and we will share the recording if you do have to go, and you can jump to that part there. So we did have we integrate on the QB Power Hour. They are a really great connection. So if you want to compare the QuickBooks connector with something that is outside of the QuickBooks ecosystem, this would be a good connection or comparison for the two. We integrate is a Shopify only connection, and it's the uniqueness of We Integrate is that the payouts actually post through undeposited funds instead of the clearing accounts, right? So, and it does add up. It does add some additional conveniences as well as potential concerns, because if you have all of your payments going into undeposited funds, all of your sales from Shopify, that could be an unruly mess.
Yeah, and like remember what I said about 20 minutes ago, I like to split those payment methods up into their own clearing account. So in this situation, if you're using We Integrate and you're just using Shopify payments, which by the way, Shopify payments I love, because if you're on TikTok channel, all these various integrations through Shopify, they all pay out through Shopify payments.
Yeah.
So you can use something like this. And it will be great for your sales tax if you want to manage that in QBO also.
Now, when you're dealing with multiple sales channels and you're looking for a cost-effective route, Pay Tracker is a really good option. They
$9
are from
a month, by the way, super cheap.
Yeah. From the makers of Sassant. So if you use Sassant, importer, exporter, deleter, they work in the same realm. It's the same company. They do have a section for automation so that you're able to basically create some automating rules of how these things actually post. And of course, Rachel and I did a workshop/demo on our workshop. So there's a link there for more of that. Now, when we're getting into the details and we really need additional details, or you need customizations between the two, Cinder and Webgility, I think, are the two major players that are out there that do that. And there is the comparison of that. The big thing that Webgility does over Cinder is it does allow for quantity and price syncing across multiple sales channels. If you have, your Shopify and your Amazon, and you want to make sure that both of them are synchronized, and QuickBooks Online is your source of truth, right?
Mhm.
So a lot of those things need to align, right? And Webgility does have a desktop integration. They do integrate with QuickBooks Desktop as well. So for those people that are still on QuickBooks Desktop and managing their inventory inside of QuickBooks Desktop, that does give them a viable option as well. And with Shopify,
and I don't know Webgility very well. You're a Webgility expert. I unfortunately, I don't know much about it. I haven't really used it.
Yeah. And with Shopify, it will actually do product listings on Shopify. Webgility will do Shopify listings. So you can create a new item inside of your desktop and then post that listing on Shopify through their desktop product.
Cool.
So it's kind of neat. Now, you're more familiar with Cinder. What does Cinder do well that you've seen?
I've even seen a couple people talk about this in the chat, but for anybody that's frustrated about a connector not posting refunds or returns, get Cinder, because I never have issues with that. First of all, I prefer Cinder's user interface. I like their dashboard. I like their ability to, it's called rollback if you need to unpost something. And for when I need to bring in individual sales receipts, a lot of times, even if I'm not managing inventory in QBO, I actually have a couple clients in which we're managing the inventory in an IMS. We're in Katana, we're in something else, but we still use the individual sales postings through Cinder just because it's so fantastic. And I'm not going to use the one in QBO. It's too slow, it's too clunky, and sometimes I have issues with the returns. So Cinder is, in my opinion, by far the best connector when it comes to individual sales transactions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things that we talked about in our comparison when we did the workshop is the connection that you need to have in order to confirm the sale. One thing that Cinder, it provides you a link or an access to that sale, so you're able to see the sale that was downloaded. But if you actually want to see who the customer was and everything, that's the sales detail, you have to have access to the client's Shopify or their sales channel, whatever that happens to be. So it takes you to the door, but doesn't necessarily have all the details inside of the app itself, unless they've changed it that I know of. But in Webgility, you can see the sales detail in the application without having access to those other things.
Yeah,
So,
that's really cool because a lot of times you do have to go to the portal to go pull up the sales information. And so, Cinder works really well with WooCommerce too, just FYI, if, anybody has a client on WooCommerce.
other channels as well.
I like it. Yeah.
Yeah. So if that's not part of your engagement where you don't have collaborator access of their Shopify, then, and they need detail, then Webgility might get the nod because you don't need that access because you can see the sales detail directly within Webgility. So here's, as promised, the summary of all of the options. Rachel and her team there have really kind of broken down, comparing the pricing, the different syncing options, most ideal situation, key strengths and limitations of all of the things that we've talked about here today. And then when you have one last thing that's a little bit more advanced, so if you got to go, you got to go. That's great. So when inventory is not the source of truth inside of QuickBooks Online, and there are inventory management solutions that might be using here, we're not talking about Excel, but they're actually using an inventory management solution app. Those apps will typically have a sales connector bridge to Shopify or whatever place that they're doing. When you have a client that's using these kinds of applications, what surprises have you seen, or do they work just splendidly?
Well, you really need to have, for really any of these, I would go through their software training and really make sure that you understand how the software works. But then I would make sure that you have a working knowledge of the inventory workflow. You really want to make sure you understand the inventory workflow, even if you're doing it in QBO. But Katana, I would say, is great for manufacturing, meaning I'm assembling items together to create a finished good. It's not the greatest for heavy e-commerce, I'll say. Maybe one Shopify store, it's fine. But since 7 Core, I'm very involved with that app. I work with the team there. I'll be at Sin 7 Summit this August. That is the one that I have most of my training and specialty in. Multi-channel purchasing. Speaking of purchasing, Settle is actually a great. Somebody was talking about, can I do the purchasing in Shopify? No, you can't. So you really want to make sure that, again, you're following that purchasing inventory workflow. You can do it in Settle. And then Settle will even keep a list of your inventory items, and with, I don't know, like FIFO costing or weighted average costing or something like that. You're not going to get any of that inventory valuation in Shopify. It's really just a place to list, these are my items and here's how many I have. You use an app like this and you're really going to utilize a proper inventory costing method. Oh, yeah, we did leave out Fishbowl. Sorry, yeah. I actually have some clients on Fishbowl, too. The only reason we didn't bring up Fishbowl is because it's really a desktop product, and we're not going to really get into that. They do have a web-based product, too, but...
Yep, which they'll be coming on the Power Hour in June.
Yeah. And so we definitely have a relationship with them. Yeah, they're a thing. For me, personally, I'm a very heavy Sin 7 Core user. It's totally cloud-based. And there's no hosting, in the web, nothing like that, no additional cost for that. And I think that's a really excellent advantage that it has.
Right. And this slide here is really speaking to what those inventory management solutions are designed to do. They're designed to manage the inventory, right? So they're designed to have things come in and so that you can see that source of truth of your inventory, right? And sales made online are going to be part of that, right? And so what they're not really concerned about is, did you get paid for those sales that you made? And so a lot of them are a little bit light on the payout option, right? So they may have their own integration into QuickBooks, but you'll likely not find that they are concerned about the Shopify payments payout with the
No,
fees.
and the thing with that is, will it sync a payment? Yeah, of course. You can sync your individual sales over from your IMS, like from Catan or Sin7 Core, and it'll also sync a record of payment, right? You've got a record payment that's coming over also to undeposited funds. But again, you're going to get a batched payout. And so I usually will still use Bookkeep. And I know that there are a lot of people that do. Another one that we didn't talk about was Finale Inventory. They have a special integration with A2X for this exact purpose. Manage your movements in Finale Inventory, but then A2X is going to grab the sales data, post it to your accounting software, and the expected payout data, post it to your accounting software. So that way you've got match, and then you're syncing over your, I'm not going to get into that complexity, but we can talk about that another day.
Right. But I mean, all of this is in service to, making your life a little easier when it comes to the bank feed of matching transactions as opposed to posting transactions or setting up an automation or a rule inside the bank feed to go to those various clearing accounts, right?
For sure. And the slippery slope of all of this is, I know it feels and sounds complicated, and it just requires a little bit more understanding. And that's why we're here. We specialize in this. Like, I train in this area. I offer coaching. My firm is Net Deposited. We handle nothing but these clients. And well, not nothing, but we handle a large amount of these clients. And so we really specialize in this area, and I'll create a custom setup, bypass this and do that. So if you're feeling frustrated, there is help. And so that's the thing. It's a slippery slope. It feels like, well, this is all going to be a mess. Trust me. It's a lot of information. It will set you up for absolute complete automation. It's wonderful is what I'm trying to say. It's really, really great when it's set up. And
this is an industry that will allow you to, if you're concerned about the, bookkeepers going away because of AI, right? This is going to get you
get involved in this, and you'll always have a job. All of this constantly needs to be troubleshooted. By the way, even when it's set up on AutoPost, even when it's mapped perfectly, even when it's doing all the things you want it to do, it'll still break. They'll still add a new, your client will add a new item the wrong way into this system. It constantly needs to be troubleshooted. So there is job security in this for sure. Yeah. But when it is set up and it's working properly and you've got high volume clients, it's the only way to do this.
Yeah. Last couple topics here is, and somebody was asking, well, how do you get in touch with Rachel? And that'll be on the next slide. So Shopify expenses, right? So this is one of those things that a lot of applications have kind of left out, right? So the monthly charges that Shopify charges, shipping for one. So all the things, if you're using the Shopify shipping manager, to create your own shipping labels and those types of things, they charge that at once a month or, periodically throughout the month, depending on their volume. But those shipping charges come separately. They are not part of this clearing account situation of sales versus expected payouts. Like, they don't take the shipping charges out of the payouts. They charge them separately, right? Because they might build up a threshold and say, oh, we need to charge them now for all their shipping charges. Shopify has a wonderful ecosystem of plugins, right? And those apps will charge Shopify, and then that'll show up on your billing statement as well. And Shopify doesn't do this out of the kindness of the heart, so they have their own subscription costs, right? Yeah. But you might want to have those things separated out, right? Your shipping charges, your Shopify plugins, and your Shopify subscription fees, but nobody really manages that all too well. So we did a workshop with a demo of how to be able to take that CSV file with that bill that you get, either by getting it from your client or getting it directly if you have access to the Shopify portal, and being able to download that CSV and use Sasant importer, which Murph was saying that now the pay tracker and the importer are now kind of combined into one application, but using the Sasant tool to be able to automate bringing those in so that it automatically splits those out for you based off of how you want to see that. So we did that there over at School of Bookkeeping. And if you need more help, you want to talk to, consult with Rachel, we created an e-commerce fundamentals course at School of Bookkeeping where we talk about this terminology, the inventory considerations, and going into the sales connector review as well. Over at School of Bookkeeping, it's live, it's available. You can access it for 30 days. And if you need one-on-one time with Rachel, you can set that up through the course there as well. I did put in the chat as well that we Rachel's email address. So if you want to copy that, or Rachel, if you want to put it in the chat just as well, if people want to shoot you a quick email, you can do that as well.
Yep. It's just rachel@netdeposited.com.
Right. But it's creatively, you drop the A, or I don't know which is more
it's
prevalent.
Just plain old EL, RACHEL.
So I'm going to throw up the last poll question here as we come in for a landing. Was it useful? If you wanted to get in touch with Rachel, we can provide that information to Rachel, and then she can reach out directly. But Rachel, any closing thoughts as we come in for a landing here?
Nope. Other than I'm just going to keep studying all these apps, and as they add more things, just keep learning. And I personally love this niche. I think it's great. And I think something like, I don't know, there's $65 billion worth of e-commerce, like in just last year alone. It's not going anywhere. More and more people are selling online. And, now that there are more AI tools to help facilitate this, it's just going to be even more prolific. But yeah.
Yeah. And then you said the word worldwide, and I see this. Are you sure?
I don't know. I think that was just the United States.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's but also, that adds up additional considerations, right? If they're shipping worldwide or, multi-currency, all other issues as well, if they are in a worldwide shipping
yeah, well, that's
situation.
another reason you want to use Shopify, because Shopify Markets allows you in the US to sell worldwide and receive your currency in the US dollar. So it's really the advantages of using something like Shopify, I just can't preach it enough. It's really incredible.
All right. So next time on the Power Hour, if you haven't registered for it already, please do. Individual one, we're going to be having a representative from Relay, the financial institution, talking about passing the baton. We had her come on a couple of our workshops. So we are going to be talking about how Relay streamlines the banking connection and adds to some of the functionality inside of QuickBooks Online from a banking perspective, and how accounting professionals can partner with Relay to have it be part of their own tech stack that they recommend to their clients. So join us for that in a couple of weeks, and we'll see you next time on the QB Power Hour. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the QB Power Hour podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to support our amazing sponsors. You'll find them listed on our homepage at qbpowerhour.com. And if you're getting value from the show, we'd love it if you left us a review wherever you get your podcasts. Your feedback helps us grow and reach more accounting pros just like you. Until next time, keep powering up your practice with QB Power Hour.